Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Very excited for today's guest. He's the owner of a Wyoming guest ranch, and he also is the head of marketing and partnerships at Crowdspring. And what he does is he helps business owners to understand how to build a strong brand. So I'm very excited to be talking to Jason Byer today. Hey, Jason, you ready to rock?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
Perfect.
It's a passionate subject.
Yes, working from home. That's awesome. So we always start off here on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we can be inspired by.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been working remote now for about a decade and in kind of a hybrid and full time. And like most people, I think it was a focus on the lifestyle. I wanted to be there for the kids and not spend so much time in the commute. And I think where that really came to a head was I got sponsored by Flex Jobs, which many people know is finding flexible employment as the job board. And I got to travel for a year and document that experience working from a mobile home, one that was moving with my girls. And that came with, it's kind of that quintessential moment where all this work from home kind of came to this moment of like, all right, can we do this and like stay sane and raise our kids and move around while holding down a strategic position in the company. And it came with a lot of challenges, a lot of struggles, and it was just a wonderful opportunity, I think, to have that.
That is very interesting. So you worked from a mobile home traveling around. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yep, it was a 30-foot camper. It was not a big enough. We had two little girls and traveling with us and my wife. And it was an interesting balance. You think it's difficult sometimes for us to think about how to balance, work life when we have, running water and heat and we know where we're staying, but it just adds a layer of complexity when, you don't know where you're going to park next and you'd like to have some time to have some fun, and you're still trying to make sure you add that strategic focus for the core job.
Wow. Okay. Well, we always also talk, we balance the good with the bad, and sometimes
Sure.
there's some bad notes to be hit here. So,
Right.
based on what you just said, I bet you've got some stories for me. So, was there a bad note that you can share with us that we can learn from?
Yeah, that's that's an interesting. I hadn't thought about that, connecting the two until just now. But we got stuck in California during one of the wildfires, and we were kind of trapped between a lot of smoke. And it was on Thanksgiving. This was a couple of years ago now, and it was on Thanksgiving that we were able to finally travel down to the place we wanted to go, just north of San Francisco. And we get there on Thanksgiving. I'm tired. I just want a glass of wine. I got the camper parked, and I'm like, I'm done. I've got to work tomorrow. I'm like, it was Thanksgiving. We were traveling, and so I rushed and got the camper. We had a trailer, got it unhooked, and as soon as I unhooked it, I realized we were on a hill, and there's just it dropped off the hitch and started rolling, and just your heart sinks because there's nothing you can do. I can't like grab it and hold it, and it starts
Wow.
sliding towards this cliff. It's a 30-foot cliff, and it just bumps into this little fence, a dinky little fence. I'm not sure why it was there other than to save my bacon. And that's what it did. It bumped into that and stopped. And I think my lesson for that trip and just in life in general was just to slow down, to slow down and realize that, like, all right, if I'm rushing a little too fast, what could happen here, and luckily it was just a big scare.
Wow. That is so deep.
Right.
Slow down. And it's totally true. I mean, and when you think about it, there's very few things that really need to be handled, that
Exactly.
quickly, right? And if it does, and you can't get, I mean, you think about those times when people will, be trying to sell you something and they're like, you need to make a decision right now. If you leave this room, that deal's gone. Those are usually scams, aren't they?
Good point.
I mean, if the
Yeah.
deal expires right now, then how valuable is this program that you're about to embark in? And if the program is as valuable as they say it is, then you can pay full price, right?
Right. Great point.
So
I
I
agree.
So I think, yeah, and just about everything. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because we do make mistakes when we try to rush too much, right?
Exactly. Yep. And sometimes the stakes are pretty high. I could have lost the whole camper, been stuck on in California, and
Yep.
yeah,
And I mean, it was for wine though, so
yeah, on Thanksgiving.
so I can understand that.
Right.
Right
Right.
on. So now, okay, I mean, I can't wait to talk about the next topic, which is the jam room, because I mean, I bet you got some really cool stories about how to make that successful in your journey. So tell me, the good and the bad about having a good home office.
Absolutely. I mean, it's critical. It starts with like a mental space, right? So I've got two little girls and my wife, and so it starts with having that mental kind of barrier in space where the family knows, like, this is my work. This is my work environment. There's times when you can interrupt, because look, this is why we do this, right? We want to be there for the family, and so we want to share the little struggles, or help out around the house when we can. But we also have to have that barrier around us, that says, look, I'm working, and I need to be able to focus, especially if you're in a job that requires a lot of focus and strategy. And so it starts really outside the room. It starts to make sure that the people that are in your life recognize, that it's important, for you to have this space. And then you have to recognize that you can't abuse that privilege, right? I can't just go to the room and say, I can't be bothered anytime I'm in here, right? Like, it's got to be a give and a take. And so it starts outside the room. Once you get inside the room, this is the space to craft. I think the single biggest investment that I made, that really paid dividends, is my camera. So having a DSLR camera setup, it's a Sony mirrorless camera. The DSLRs don't stay on as long; they're not as strong. But replacing the webcam with this mirrorless camera has really just, it's like a new suit. It's like in the old days where we worked from offices. You'd care about how you looked, physically, and now, kind of that digital presence has been so helpful for meetings, because it allows you to feel a little bit closer to that person. It's a little bit clearer of a connection, and a lot of times it's a great way to stand out. A lot of times, I look better than the CEO of a company that jumped on a call. There's something to that when you're in a strategic environment at the company. So I think, for me, it's been a heavy focus on the mental side of my space, making sure that I know that when I'm in the space, it's time to perform, that I'm not doing really anything else in this space. And my space is not glorious right now. I'm still building my house. So I'm actually like in an upstairs room inside of a gable. It is not a, beautiful space. So I know a lot of people have, struggles where maybe working remote is new to them and they don't have the dedicated space, and they're sharing that with a bedroom or a living room or something else, and it's awkward. It's more just to make sure that your desk and that space that you occupy during work is set up, for work, and the tools that you need. So
Yeah,
I think
I
I give a
agree.
little bit more credence to the mental side of my space than the physical objects.
Well, and I do like that you focused on that, because I know my first home office was in the kitchen. It just,
Right.
I mean, if you're, especially if you are, jumping out into something and you're not really prepared for it, well, maybe you didn't buy a house with an office in it because you didn't expect to have an office, and you got to make it work with. But I like, I sort of did the same thing. I had this little corner that had my desk on it, and it was all set up for work. And when I was at that desk, because I had my son was at home as well. He was 1 year old when I started working from home. And you've got to set these boundaries. And
Right.
believe it or not, the kids actually, can't control everything, but they do kind of get it.
They
Don't they?
do.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. It helps as they get older and they recognize, that, what is dad doing? He's not just sitting on a computer,
Yeah.
hitting keys. But, I think, getting back to this mental, it's helpful to educate the family, especially if they didn't come from, if your wife, doesn't, or husband, spouse doesn't work from home and they don't quite understand this, it helps to provide that education about, what is a flow state. What are you trying to get when you're total concentration? So in the house that I'm building, I have a bathroom right next to my office. I designed that on purpose so that, I can't get distracted. Right now, I have to go through kind of living areas. And so I explained to the family, like, look, when I've got to run to the restroom or run to make some tea real quick, I'm still focused, right? Like, I don't want to hear about problems yet. I'm going to make time to hear about those. I'm not trying to avoid the challenges of family life and what we need to discuss, but I can't do that right now mentally. I need to stay focused. And so I think that's critical. Whereas before we might have that in an office. Before, you might not know what's happening at the house because you're geographically away from that. Now it's a little bit harder in that we have to mentally separate ourselves because we're in the same physical space.
Yeah, I think that what you said is key. It's just about communicating that and also sticking to whatever you just said.
Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, if you abuse the room, or the
Oh,
spot.
if I start watching movies up here,
Yeah.
it's done. Nobody's going to respect the space.
Yeah, yeah. So you have to actually be productive in those. And you know what? That's probably really good as well because for us as well, we need to have some sort of balance as well. So,
Sure.
if you're always productive in that room, your brain will start to get used to being productive in that room and you probably will be more productive, right?
Agreed.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right on. I'm glad you touched on that stuff. So now let's talk a little bit about now you've found a space to work. You're getting moving here. Now you've got to start to build an audience and build some fans and get some people looking at your business. So how
Right.
do you approach the marketing side of it?
Yeah. So, this is my focus is on branding. So I lead marketing and partnerships for crowdspring.com. It's a 15-year-old brand where we focus on helping small business owners, solopreneurs, agency owners on how to build a strong brand. And this sounds scary for a lot of people, right? And it's so critical, getting to your question of, where do you start with your marketing? You have to start with your brand and who you're trying to reach. Who's your audience? Why are they choosing you over a competitor? Why do they stick with you? Why do they repeat purchase? And so the brand is very simply every interaction that somebody has with your company. That's it. It's as simple as every interaction. So this is emails. This is how you present yourself in a video conference. This is how quickly you return phone calls. It's your return policy. It's all of this, right? And so what we do and what I do is focus on the branding first because everything else flows from that, right? The style that you use for your emails and who you're going to, what social media platforms you're going to be involved in for your marketing, that all has to come from, well, what's my brand? Why do people like me? What audience am I talking to? And if you don't answer those questions first, it becomes very difficult to build to build a marketing plan. And then the very next step after creating the brand is the brand identity. And the brand identity is all the visual elements. And they're important because we process imagery thousands of times faster than text, right? Thousands of times faster than me telling you what I do. Me showing you through visual imagery is going to make an impact very quickly. And so at Crowdspring, we have 33 categories of branding and design. It's a focus on custom logos, custom designs that now you insert that within all of your marketing, right? Flows from it's your brand first, and then your brand identity translates that brand, and then you use this brand identity in all types of marketing, right? So all of your outreach. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Hi, it's Marc Mawhinney from Natural Born Coaches, and I want to give two very big thumbs up to Tim Melanson and his Creative Crew Agency. I have been using them for a long time, and I am 100% happy. They get the job done right, they're fast, and they let me focus on my business. I don't have to worry about anything. So again, I want to give them two very big thumbs up. I have no problem recommending them. I don't give testimonials for everyone because my name is attached to it, but I gladly do so for Tim and the Creative Crew Agency. So use them, you won't regret it, and good luck.
So, okay, I have questions on that. So now, because I'm in a similar space, I do marketing as well and websites. So now, what I've noticed is that the best way to figure out your brand is to figure out what's already been happening, right? So
Sure.
here's the people I've been working with so far, and these are the ones that I like, these are the ones that don't work out so well, and then you can sort of start to figure out what your brand is that way. But what if you're just getting started and you don't, like, how do you figure out who you want to serve if you haven't served anybody yet?
Right. You have
Any
to make
thought
some
about that?
yeah, you have to make some assumptions, right? And you have to also, you know, it sounds kind of Oprah-ish, but you have to forgive yourself if you make the wrong choice, right? So you've got to say, look, I need to commit to something, because if you don't commit to something, you run the risk of somebody just thinking you're something for anybody, right? Which doesn't really resonate. Now they're going to start beating you up over price, because it's like, well, that's the only thing I can compare you. You don't look like an expert. You're not really talking to me specifically. You're a little bit more generic. So pick a lane and realize that you may need to refresh that later. You may need to change it, because as you mentioned, most of us get into business and we just serve anybody with a pulse. And then we start to realize, wait a minute, I really like this one group. They don't balk at my pricing. You know, I enjoy talking with them. So if you're not at that point, if you're just getting started, you know, your goal is really to find that nexus of, what am I good at? You know, what am I trying to sell? What is the core, you know, product? And then who do I like talking to? Who do I assume is going to be, you know, a customer that is going to pay the prices that I need, right? If you've set the price, this is what I need in my service, you've essentially eliminated a certain group of businesses or individuals who can't pay that price or won't pay that price, right? And so you start to narrow it down, but just by picking the audience, make some assumptions and find the areas where maybe you have some commonality, right? So, you know, if you're into, I've done an Ironman before, right? I can speak to endurance athletes. So if I'm creating maybe something that anybody's doing, you know, building websites or coaching, right? How do I niche that down a little bit further? Well, maybe creating them for this industry isn't very unique, but at least I can speak to it. At least I can resonate. We can have good conversations, because people want to do business with people they like, right? And so I think it's a complicated answer, but we don't want analysis paralysis. We don't want to be thinking so long about, I don't know what my niche is. You know, pick one, move with it, and then make some iterations later when you find out, you know, they're not the right fit.
Yeah, I love it. I love those answers, because I'd always have found that having a branding conversation is a really good way to figure all that stuff out. And I think you're right. I think people don't want to get into that because they don't want to make any commitments to anything yet. You know, they're sort of like, oh, I'm not quite ready for that. I don't want to, spend the money or do. But I mean, you don't even necessarily have to spend any money yet. But you have to really start to think about who it is you're serving. And regardless of where you're on your journey, I mean, you mentioned earlier that, if you've already got some business going and meeting with a branding specialist is going to be the best thing you ever did, because now all of a sudden they're going to start to ask you some questions that are really going to target you into an area. And I mean, what you focus on expands, right? And if you start focusing on exactly what you want, that's only going to get bigger. And
Right.
then on the other hand, if you're just getting started and you don't know who you serve yet, having those conversations is going to make you go, yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that is who I want to focus on. I want to focus on people that I get along with, and I want to serve them. Yeah. Let's go down
Right.
that way, right?
Exactly. I mean, think about the challenge to not committing to something, right? To not, and I'll focus on the visual side, to not creating a strong visual brand, to not creating a logo because you're fearful of focusing on one niche, right? Why do we have logos, right? As a business, it's not because Facebook, has an avatar section that we've got to upload something, or random pages ask us for a logo. We have logos because we process imagery faster than text. And the logo is a visual shorthand. It's a visual shortcut to our brand. It signals everything about who we serve and what we're trying to do. Are we trying to build trust, save them money, speak to an affluent audience? This is what colors and shapes and words within this logo are going to communicate. What happens if you have something very generic? What happens if you speak to everyone. You use a free logo generator or something, and it spits out something that's uninspiring and generic. It's meant to talk to everybody. So it's not talking to anybody. It's not serving that purpose of a visual shortcut, a shorthand for your brand, because it's meant for anyone. And so what happens early in your business is it makes it even more harder to grow your audience, because now you're not talking to anybody. You're not even talking to the wrong person. You're not focused in on the wrong niche that you made the wrong association for. You're talking to a generic audience, and it becomes very difficult to understand. God, starting a business is hard. Why make it even harder, by not communicating what you're trying to do? Even if you ultimately find out that's the wrong approach, at least you communicated, the most succinctly to this audience. You just picked the wrong audience, and now you can refresh or refocus the brand somewhere else.
Oh man. And just think about it this way. If you make a decision today to focus on an audience, you find out that it's the wrong audience, and next month you start focusing on the right audience, versus you didn't do anything.
Right.
And now you're floundering for a few years until you're better off to actually, go in that direction, figure out it's not for you, so that you can get on the right path quicker, right?
Exactly. I mean, look, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. You want to make, you want to make the commitment and start moving forward. Even if it's the wrong commitment, you want to give your all so that you can say, you know what, wrong audience, let's refocus somewhere else. Otherwise, you're just left wondering, was it the wrong audience or was it the wrong approach? Did they not understand, what I was doing?
Yeah, exactly. You're better to figure that out as early as you can. Now, so I like having this conversation about the next topic, which is learning from the best, which is, I like to get an idea of what your idea is of learning. Like, do you hire coaches? Like, how do you find out? How do you learn what you know now? Do you have masterminds? Like, how is your process?
So I think it's a little less sexy than, the coaches and the masterminds. I think it's having a curated list of educational resources from true experts in their crafts, right? And so what I mean by this is, I think when we try and enter a new industry or we're trying to learn how to do something, we Google, like lead gen tools, or how can I get more clients, or these big topics, right? And the problem with that is the crap content ranks first. It's like HubSpot, and it's like generic, like start a blog. Okay, it's like, all right, you've just taken an entire
thanks.
It's not very helpful, right? And so what I like to do is find the content that is really focused on what they do best. So kind of rapid fire. It's Annie McGuire for copywriting. When you see some of her work compared to, and she has a blog, she's not going to come up in, HubSpot is going to outrank her every time, but her content is dramatically better. So somebody like this can show you how to improve, your copy. Dan over at Not a Newsletter, who puts together a Google Doc, very comprehensive every month. It's a cheeky name. It's still a newsletter. It's just in a Google Doc that he sends out once a month. And this is talking about email, everything around email news and privacy and tactics that you should know. Again, much deeper than something to keep ragging on HubSpot. And then finding the areas that, I think it's we don't want to just get the information that is obvious. I think we want to find and curate a list specific to your industry of who truly is the best. I mean, I can't think of his name now, but his whole thesis is he's not in MySpace. He's in development and UI UX, but he's got this thesis and podcast and newsletter around the idea of hourly billing is nuts, right? It's a clever, I can't remember the guy's name. I can remember like his tagline, and I still get his emails, but they're succinct ways of communicating how to value-based price your services, right? And so it's about finding and curating a list of true experts in your field and turning to those on a regular basis to get the insights. It's a little bit harder to find these people in your industry, It's much easier just to read the HubSpot and kind of check it off your list and say, okay, I read, the first page of Google on, these types of lead gen tactics. But I find that this resonates. It creates stronger results.
So I found Jonathan Stark.
Jonathan Stark. There we go. Yeah.
Right on. So I mean, I love that. I love that advice. And over time, you're right. You end up figuring out who these people are that are the top of the levels of your niche. But yeah, like, I'd like to get a little bit more insight into how you find these people, because I'm sure someone's listening to this going like, well, sure, thanks. I keep on ending up on HubSpot blogs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be curious. And maybe this is a personality, trait. I'm not sure. You have to, if it doesn't come naturally to you, you've got to maybe kind of schedule this curiosity, right? And so this is, podcasts. This is YouTube videos, focused on these crafts and finding these people. I think it also helps to ask, right? A lot of these people are connected. I found Jonathan Stark through Kai Davis, which was from the podcast. They stopped it now, but a podcast they were doing together, right? So it was like references between people who all, kind of hung in the same circle, offering different advice. I mean, some of them are obvious. Some of them are truly great, like Seth Godin from marketing. He's been putting out a daily email that is maybe just 2 paragraphs long at the most, very hard hitting, very, you're thinking a lot about what he's putting out. So some of these are a little bit more obvious, like who truly are the experts in these fields. But a lot of times you could just ask, you can ask other colleagues. If somebody's coming to me, I can give you a list of 10 different kind of focused in the marketing and partnership and space. But a lot of times it just is as simple as asking other colleagues that you respect, or asking the guests or the resources themselves. Hey, Jonathan Stark, I really like your content. These people respond. Who do you recommend? Who do you think is the best? What newsletters are you reading on a daily basis? I can't tell you how many times these people respond, and it's like, wow, that's cool. Like somebody with a newsletter or podcast I respect reached out. I mean, this as a host, this is what you live for. You want somebody to say, hey, Tim, what newsletters do you read? What are the top 5 you like?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, of course, it's I'm going to say this because I run a podcast, but I do find that nowadays, especially if you find a podcast that has, more than 5 episodes, like a podcast that's been running for a while, that there's something going on there, right?
Sure.
And like I've always found that as well, if you see something you like, then you can usually reach out. People are responsive. They're more responsive than people think that. Like, I think people have this idea that, oh, that person's way too successful to respond to a message from me. And maybe they are, but they're probably not. They're probably interested in helping you. And so it's worth sending them a quick message going, hey, I saw this. Oh, who can you recommend? And they'll give you somebody, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. So it is time for your guest solo, and I'm excited to hear about what's exciting in your business. So tell me, what's going on?
So at Crowdspring, what we've realized, we spend a lot of time educating around branding, much like we're doing now, trying to demystify and show that it's uncomplicated and give you permission to take that first step to say, look, commit to a lane, put some effort behind it and see the result. And so one thing we did recently was we said, let's actually make this a little bit more relevant. We've had a lot of guides on brand identity, but we said we want to make it more specific to the business. And so we created a brand identity grader. And this is a custom 10-page report. It's created for free and done by a human. And so we actually look at your brand. We grade it on a scale of 1 to 100 and provide specific insight on areas that we think you're doing well and to double down on, or areas that could use improvement. And it's been really exciting because it takes these lessons around branding and makes them super applicable. I mean, they're designed just for you. It's for your business. And, if we do this to invest in this idea of building strong brands as the secret sauce to improving your business. And then look, if you decide that you want to make some changes, Crowdspring is an affordable platform. Our logos start at $300. And it's a way to get a lot of different ideas. Each logo comes with dozens of different custom designs, so you're able to see your brand in different perspectives. If you don't need a logo because you've already gone through this process, we have 33 categories of branding and design. So the marketing materials, the flyers, the postcards, things like that. And then there's 100% money back guarantee. So if you don't, that includes credit card processing fees. It's everything. So if you don't find something you don't think it's for you, then there's no risk. But we wouldn't be in business after 15 years if we didn't have a very strong process for getting results.
Right on. So then who would be your main target audience? Like who would be the best clients for you?
So it's everyone from those just getting started. We have company and product naming. So literally, like, I don't even have a name for my company yet. I'm so new. I can't register the company until I have a name. We have those, and then we have companies that have been around for years, and they're either saying, look, I finally need to get official. I need to, I've heard this podcast, and they're telling me I really need a strong brand identity, and I agree. Let me start. Others have been operating and said, look, we need to pivot a little bit. Our business has changed and we want our brand identity to reflect that. So we work with solo business owners to Fortune 500 companies. We've worked with 65,000 clients. So there's quite a few industries and company sizes, but yeah.
Wow. Awesome. So how do we find out more?
Crowdspring.com. And if we've got some show notes, I'll send over the link for the brand identity grader as well. And then if you need to reach me, it's jason@crowdspring.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Jason. This has been a lot of fun.
It was fun. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate you.
Right on. And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.